بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. We carry on in our series of a Fiqh of Tahara, and we are speaking about nawaqid al-wudoo, nullifiers of wudoo. And up until now we mentioned 7 nullifiers of wudoo. Today we will start with number 8, and that is, does washing a deceased person nullify the wudoo? The ulama, they talk about this, and this is a khilafi issue. There's a difference of opinion on this. And some of the scholars, and I just want to excuse me, just want to make clear, we are speaking about nawaqid al-wudu, the nullifiers of wudu. We're not talking about things that necessitate ghusl. There is difference of opinion regarding this matter. Like I said, there's also a difference of opinion whether this requires a ghusl, not just a wudu. So this is what we want to speak about, and inshallah I'll try to keep it short and concise bi'idhnillah. And with this, it's regarding the person that physically touches the mayyit during the ghusl. So when somebody passes away, as we know, it's one of the rights of the Muslimin upon the rest of the Ummah, that they get themselves washed and shrouded and prayed upon and buried. So this ghusl that takes place for the Muslim, the person that is washing the mayyit, usually maybe a couple people will take place in washing the mayyit, just depending on the situation. And sometimes there's a person pouring water while the other person is the one that's physically touching the mayyit. So maybe the one that's pouring the water doesn't touch the deceased. So we're not talking about the person that may be an assistant or pouring the water out or helping them with any other thing. We're talking about the people that are actually physically touching the deceased body. Okay? Does the person who does so, does that nullify their wudu? I will just begin by asking, or for the brothers present, is this something to your knowledge from whatever you've heard in the past? Is this a nullifier of wudu by washing the mayyit? Does washing the mayyit nullify wudu? Washing the mayyit does not nullify wudu. This is the more correct opinion. We will go through the different opinions for the sake of the ilm, inshallah. We'll try to keep it concise. But just to give the al-qawl al-rajih, inshallah, to begin, washing the mayyit doesn't nullify wudu. And that being said, it also doesn't necessitate ghusl either, as some scholars have held that opinion. Okay? So, there is 2 different opinions on the matter. One being that ulama holding that washing the mayyit nullifies the person's wudu. And the second opinion being that it doesn't nullify the wudu, which is the more correct opinion. So the first opinion we'll take actually is that it's not a nullifier. Okay, this is the correct opinion, and this is the opinion of the overwhelming majority of the scholars. Among them, the Hanafi madhab, the Shafi'i madhab, the Maliki madhab, and one of 2 opinions held in the Hanbali madhab. It's also the opinion that Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah chose. A side point, the Shafi'iyya, they held the opinion that it doesn't nullify wudu, but they said it's mustahab to make wudu afterwards. Okay? The first dalil on this matter to support this opinion, it's something that we've repeated several times already throughout this series of durus, and hopefully somebody can give it to us. What is the first opinion, the strongest opinion, to show that washing the deceased does not nullify wudu? Can somebody tell us who's been following along? The strongest dalil there, what is it? Like I said, it was repeated several times about many of the other supposed nawaqid of al-wudu.
A mu'min is always tahir.
Mu'min is always tahir. Jazakallahu khairan. Because? Because there's the strongest dalil is that there is a lack of dalil. So in order for something to be considered a nullifier of wudu, okay, whatever is established bi yaqeen, it's not absolved except bi yaqeen. So wudu, if tahara is established with certainty, then you need something that is certain in order to say it's nullified. So the strongest proof to say that touching a deceased during the ghusl doesn't nullify wudu is the fact that there is a lack of dalil to say that it does. Okay, there is no authentic, clear dalil to say that it is a nullifier of wudu. Okay, we mentioned that multiple times, and this is like a qaida that you can keep in your head. Okay, if somebody wants to say something, say that this is a hukum in the sharia, then we have to know what's the dalil supporting it. Okay, the lack of dalil is the greatest argument to support something. In order for somebody to declare something is mashru' fi sharia, they have to have an evidence to do so. If they lack that, then that right there is a great evidence to say that it's not correct. Okay? Excuse me. And also, to further elaborate on this point, if somebody were to say something is a nullifier of wudu, okay, without clear dalil, they don't have clear proof to support this, their opinion, okay, that's no different than declaring something to be halal or something haram. Okay, so these points of the sharia are very important. We have to take our deen seriously. So in order for something to be declared a hukum shari, we have to have dalil from the sharia itself to say so. Okay. The second dalil, which the brother mentioned, Jazakallah khair, is that the deceased, the mu'min is always pure, whether alive or passed away, whether they are on janaba or not, the mu'min is always pure. Okay? So that being said, if somebody's washing somebody, they're washing a deceased believer, and that believer is pure, then that goes to show that they're just touching something pure, which is a Muslim's body. That doesn't nullify wudu. For argument's sake, let's say that person's body is covered in najasa. Does touching najasa nullify wudu? Does touching najasa nullify wudu?
The children know, but إذا الأم شت النجاسة عن ابنها تنتقض شروط.
Touching najasa, لمس النجاسة لا ينقض الوضوء. Touching najasa does not nullify wudu بأي حال من الأحوال. Touching najasa, I'll repeat again, touching najasa does not nullify wudu at all whatsoever. Whether it's a mother or a parent changing their children's diaper, or whether it's something else, whether it's somebody, they're cleaning their washroom, they happen to touch some najasa. Whether they're in whatever situation it may be, they make contact with some najasa, that does not nullify wudu.
Even touching a dog?
Even touching a dog does not nullify wudu. Even touching a dog doesn't nullify wudu. However, if something is najis, then if somebody makes contact with something that is najis, what is required of the person? Just to wash it. It doesn't require wudu, it just requires it to be washed. And in certain cases, depending on the opinion that is held, as some ulama, they differ with the dog, but for the ulama that say that the dog is najis, then obviously there's a certain sequence and way to washing from that. Wallahu a'lam. Okay. So that being said, even if somebody were to touch the person, they're pure to begin with. And even if there was najasa there, which is possible when they're washing a deceased person, they can be dealing with some najasa, that doesn't nullify wudu either. Okay? Another point is that you don't even have to make wudu from touching the carcass of an animal. Okay? So this is a human. Not only a human, it's a mu'min as well. So that also goes to show that it's not needed to make wudu from touching a deceased Muslim. The second opinion is that it is a nullifier of wudu. So some ulama, they say, and this opinion is one opinion, or it's the opinion of Imam Ahmad, so it's one of the two opinions mentioned in the Hanbali madhab. It's the opinion of Ishaq and Rahway, and it's also the opinion of An-Nakhai, rahimahumullah jami'an. They held the view that washing a deceased person nullifies the wudu. And like we spoke about in the past, about mufradat al-madahib, okay, can somebody just give us a recap on what's a mufrada of a madhab? If there's something like mufradat al-madahib, what does that mean? Anybody recall when we spoke about that? No. Mufradat al-madahib. Anybody recall what we said that means? What is that referring to? This mas'ala here that we're taking today is an example of mufradat madhab al-Hanbali. Okay? What are we referring to? What does that mean? Mufradat al-madhab is referring to when a madhab is singled out and holding an opinion. So this opinion is only held officially by the Hanbali madhab. No other madhab held this view. So it's called mufrada of the madhab al-Hanbali. Okay? We spoke about that in the past. Anyhow. So the ulama that say that this is a nullifier of wudoo, what is their dalil to say so? They go by an athar that's mentioned by Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, that's quoted, that one should make wudoo after washing the deceased. However, this athar is weak, okay? And there's also a hadith related by Aisha radiallahu anha, and Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, Hudayfa ibn al-Iman, and Al-Mughira ibn Shu'bah, but they are all weak. All the narrations in this mas'ala that they use to support it are all da'if. Okay, they're all weak, they are not usable as evidence. So one of the ahadith that's widely used, it's collected in Sunan al-Tirmidhi, in Abu Dawood, and Ibn Majah, and Muslim and Imam Ahmad. It's on the authority of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that one who washes, the meaning of it, one who washes the dead person should do ghusl, and the one who carries him needs to perform wudoo. Okay? So the ulama of hadith disputed whether this is actually a hadith, meaning whether it's actually the wording of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or it's an athar mentioned, or the wording from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. Imam al-Bukhari, Ali ibn al-Madini, Imam Ahmad, Abu Hatim, al-Bayhaqi, Ibn al-Mundhir, they all said that it is not a hadith that is attributable to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, and some of those ulama clearly said that there is no authentic hadith on the matter, like we just related. Okay? Another dalil that they use is also another athar that is narrated from Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, and that's in Musannaf ibn Abi Shaybah, in which he was asked about making ghusl after washing a dead person, and he said, he was asked, do you have to make ghusl from washing a dead person? He said, no, you just have to make wudu. Okay, so this can be replied to in a number of ways. It can be refuted in several ways. One of them being the wudu that's mentioned by him is the linguistic wudu of just washing oneself, not the shar'i wudu that we know. Meaning that someone would just wash his hands after doing so. And it's also possible that he meant that one who wasn't on wudu must make wudu for the salat al-janazah that takes place after washing the mayyit. Okay? A third way to make a rebuttal to this is that it's an athar and it's not a hadith. What is the difference between athar and hadith? الفرق بين الأثر والحديث, what is it? Which one? A hadith is what's related from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. An athar is something that is related from Sahaba or Tabi'in. Okay? So, another dalil that was used was stating that washing the dead person, okay, when somebody's washing the mayyit, they might come in contact with their private parts, which is a mas'ala that we spoke about before, touching the private parts, whether it nullifies wudu or not. Okay? So they said that they made the comparison to that washing the mayyit isn't a nullifier in and of itself, but it's like sleep. It's madannat al-hadath. Okay, it's when somebody anticipates, or it's very likely that a hadith can take place. When somebody's sleeping, sleep in and of itself isn't a nullifier, But it's very likely that when somebody is sleeping, they can pass wind or something, and that would nullify their wudu. So they say, washing the mayyit, the ghusl is the same thing. It's very possible that somebody might come in contact with the mayyit's private parts, which would render their wudu invalid. However, there's several ways we can make a response to this. The first one being what? Who remembers what's the most correct opinion with regards to touching the private part? Does it nullify wudu or not? We took many opinions on this matter. What's the most correct opinion when it comes to touching the private part? Is this a nullifier of wudu or no? Can somebody summarize what we took before? Yes, what? Okay, so touching any private part nullifies wudu, touching your own, touching somebody else. What is the, narrow it down a little bit for us?
Touching your own.
Touching your own private part is what nullifies wudu. Touching someone else's private part, we said the more correct opinion, wallahu a'lam, is that it does not nullify wudu. So that's the first response, is that touching someone else's private part to begin with isn't a nullifier according to the most correct opinion. And number two, okay, it's not permitted aslan to begin with. It's not permissible for somebody to touch the deceased's private part when they're washing them during the ghusl. Okay, very important to note. Someone's making a ghusl of the mayyit, they're not allowed to touch their private part to begin with, okay, without a barrier. So there has to be a barrier between the person that's washing and the private part of the individual. They're not allowed to just expose it and to touch that. Wal-'iyadhu billah. Okay, we do not do such things. Nasallallahu al-afiyah. And that being said, touching the private part of a dead person isn't something that would be common. Okay, because like we said, we're not allowed to do it to begin with. There's going to be a barrier there during the ghusl, so that was not going to be a common occurrence. That being said, we would not say that the ghusl of the mayyit is a nullifier of wudu because they may touch the private part, for argument's sake, saying that touching the private part would nullify wudu, because that is just an exception. The default is that they're not going to touch the private part during the ghusl. Okay, so we wouldn't say that washing the person is a nullifier for an exceptional matter within that process. Okay? Another dalil on the matter is, and this is specific to the Hanbali madhab, and they state that it's a rule that they use in the Hanbali madhab, that everything requiring ghusl requires wudu. Okay? They claim, that everything that requires ghusl requires wudu as well. So that being said, those who say that one must make a ghusl from washing the mayyit, they say because it requires ghusl, as we said in the beginning, even though the more correct opinion is that it doesn't. But for argument's sake, they say that washing the mayyit requires a ghusl, and in turn, due to the rule in the Hanbali madhab that everything requiring ghusl also requires wudu, then in turn it also requires wudu as well. Okay? So we said that al-qawl al-rajih is the more correct opinion, that washing the mayyit isn't a nullifier of wudu, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. There's no clear dalil on the matter, and there's no ayah, hadith that is authentic and clear, nor is there any ijma' from the Ummah as well. And inshallah I will keep today's class nice and light, so we'll conclude with this. جزاكم الله خيرا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد والحمد لله رب العالمين.